community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations, and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify. Gladstone Regional Council are committed to fostering a proud, involved and engaged community. The Gladstone Regional Council Community Investment Program provides financial support to local community initiatives, projects and events which promote community connections, regional enhancements, community celebrations and community education. For more information on the Community Investment Program, visit gladstone.qld.gov.au. Gladstone Regional Council. Connect, innovate, diversify.
No messages of condolence. We'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is prior notifications of MPIs and conflicts of interest. And Councillor Muscat has one, and Councillor Hanson as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, Natalia Muscat, declare that I have a personal interest in item G 3.1 RADF Run 1 2019-2020, which might constitute a perceived conflict of interest as I was an employee of Welcoming Intercultural Neighbours until 30th of August 2019. This organisation is one of the 22 funding recipients seeking an outcome report acceptance. However, I have determined that this personal interest is not sufficient significant that will lead me to make a decision on this matter that is contrary to the public interest. I will best perform my responsibility of serving the overall public interest of the whole of communities area by participating in the discussion, and therefore I propose to stay in the room for voting on this matter. I acknowledge that council must determine whether I have a real or perceived conflict of interest, and then if I can participate in the meeting while the item is considered.
Thank you, Councillor Muscat. Councillors, questions to Councillor Muscat or a mover whether a conflict exists or does not exist? Councillor Goodluck.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that there's a perceived conflict. Is that right?
Thank you. Move Councillor Goodluck, a perceived conflict. Seconded Councillor Trevor, I believe.
I second that, Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Muscat before I put that vote, being a perceived conflict, and then we vote whether Councillor Muscat will stay in the room? Okay, no further questions. I put the motion that perceived conflict exists. All in favour? Those against? The motion's carried. Now we will vote to stay whether Councillor Muscat can stay in the room or not. Councillor Goodluck.
Happy to move Councillor Muscat stay in the room, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Goodluck. Seconded by Councillor Hanson. Is there any further discussion or debate? We'll put the motion. All in favour? Those against? Motion's carried. Thank you, Councillor Muscat. You can stay in the room. Councillor Hanson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. The same item, item G.3.1, the RADF round 1 funding. I have a perceived personal interest to the first recipient on, or proposed recipient on the list, Ping Carline, as she's married to my nephew. I've got a perceived conflict of interest in that. I've also got a perceived conflict of interest in the lighting of the silos, because I did send, on behalf of the Rotary Club of Gladstone Midday, a personal reference in favour of that item. So I would like to stay in the room if I can. I don't think there's interests, those perceived personal interests could waver my thoughts on voting for these items. So I'd like to put it to the group if you would think that's the case.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Councillors, questions to Councillor Hanson or a mover either way? Thank you. Councillor Churchill.
Thanks, Mayor. Matt, could I make a suggestion, perhaps in the circumstances in advance, that if that particular one application, our shining stars, is the issue that Councillor Hanson has, perhaps with your approval we could separate that particular one so that Councillor Hanson, if he was to be excluded in that discussion on number 1, that be dealt with separately and the other ones can be dealt with the presence of Councillor Hanson. Suggestion.
Thank you, Councillor Churchill. First, I'll just get a resolution on whether a conflict exists, then we can decide whether we split the item. But Councillor Muscat?
I move that Councillor Hanson has a perceived conflict of interest, or a conflict of interest in that item.
Thank you. Move Councillor Muscat, seconded by Councillor Churchill. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Trevor? No? Okay, the perceived conflict of interest. I'll put the motion that a perceived conflict of interest exists. All in favour? Those against? Motion's carried. Now we will put the motion as to whether Councillor Hanson will remain in the room for that item. And we can move to split them after that. Is there a mover for that, Councillor Trevor?
I move that Councillor Hanson leave the chambers during the discussion of that item.
Thank you, Councillor Trevor. And is that seconded by Councillor Churchill?
Yeah, I'll second that amendment.
Yeah.
Is that item 1?
Item 1? Yeah, so your conflict was in one item, wasn't it?
Yes, Mayor. You know, in light of that motion, I'm happy to leave on both items, so it makes it clearer and easier for the group. I'm happy to leave on both.
Thank you. Okay.
Mayor, I'm just seeking some clarification on whether there are 2 conflicts here, Rick, or 1? 2 in relation to the one matter or to both matters?
No, these are separate matters. One's
separate
in
matter.
relation to number 1, Ping Carline, and the second one is in relation to the application for painting or for lighting the silos from Midday Rotary Club.
Councillors, they're on one item on the agenda though, so.
They're on one item on the agenda, yes.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. We have a
I'm
mover
happy to
that-
leave, that's fine.
Yeah, move that Councillor Hanson has a conflict and they should leave the room by Councillor Trevor, seconded Councillor Churchill. Any further discussion? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Those against, the motion's carried. Councillor Hanson will leave the room as well. I have a item I'd like to declare in the confidential item today in planning matter 8.1.
Excuse me, Mayor Matt, can I just get a point of clarification on that particular motion that we just made, we were dealing with the Our Shining Stars application.
We were dealing with Councillor Hanson having a material conflict of interest, sorry, not material personal interest, in that item on the agenda. I didn't split them because he decided that he would deal with them both together. We couldn't take a motion to split them, but that would have to come from Councillor Hanson if he'd like to do that, and he's decided
No,
not
that's
to.
fine. No, I'm happy with that. That clarifies it, because if Councillor Hanson is indicating that he'll leave the room for the entire agenda item, then that resolves it. Thank you.
It does. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Muscat.
Sorry, before you move on to the next thing, because I've just remembered also that I provided a letter of support to the Rotary Club in relation to the lighting the silos. Would that constitute a conflict?
Councillor Trevor.
I move that Councillor Natalia Muscat has a conflict of interest in relation to that item.
Thank you. Seconder, please. Seconder, Councillor O'Grady, that a conflict exists in that item as well, but yeah, you've already been voted to stay in the room for that item originally, so we'll go again for the second part. Any further discussion? Excuse me, put the motion. All in favour that a conflict exists? Those against? Motion's carried. Now we'll vote whether the Councillor Muscat can stay in the room. Can I have a move up, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think I'd move that Councillor Muscat would have to leave the room for that particular item, because I couldn't see how you could provide a letter of support for a project and then potentially go against that project if that was to be the case. So, not sure if you want to consider splitting the item as we discussed before, but I'd have to move that Councillor Muscat leave the room for that particular item.
Okay, is there a seconder for that motion, please? Seconded, Councillor O'Grady. Any further comments? I have to respectfully disagree, Councillor Goodluck, but I see that that motion is most likely going to get up. I think it's very likely that you could provide a letter of support for in your position as a councillor for a project, but when it comes to the table, you could make the decision not necessarily to support it if it's going to, the financial impact is on the ratepayer, rather than your letter of support could have been for the Gambling Community Benefit Fund, or it could have been for them to access funds from QGC or from the Port Authority, for example. So I think it is possible for you to write a letter of support and not be conflicted in this room, but that's my opinion. The motion is now there. Moved and seconded. I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Matt, can I just get an understanding of the motion now, please, if you wouldn't mind?
You can. The motion is that Councillor Muscat leave the room. I've got to put the motion again. All in favour? Those against? Motion is carried. Councillor Muscat will leave the room for that item.
No, thank you.
So, yeah, thanks, Matt. So, as I'd indicated there earlier, perhaps in the circumstances, because we now have Councillor Hanson and Councillor Muscat, whether it be because of a letter of support, that we separate the two projects from the rest of the assessment. Although Councillor Hanson has probably confused me a little bit now, because Councillor Hanson's indicating that he earlier would leave for the entire agenda item.
There's no confusion. You heard properly there, Councillor. I will leave for the whole agenda item.
Thank you, and we'll move to split the items when we get to them. Councillor Trevor?
Mayor, my principal concern in relation to this debate, firstly, regarding Councillor Hanson's personal circumstances and the reason for a request that he leave the room, was based on the fact that one of his relatives were involved, not necessarily the letter of support. But on a quiet moment of reflection, I think Councillor Goodluck's point is a very good one in relation to providing letters of support to matters that then come before this table. Now, what we've effectively done today is set a precedent in relation to the future provision of letters of support to any organisation, sporting, charitable or otherwise, in this community, that we simply don't provide letters of support as councillors, just as we don't provide letters of support to people who are appearing before the courts. It's accepted practice that you just don't do it, and I think today's example is a clear indication that any future letters of support by councillors could compromise your position around this table when it comes to voting.
Mayor Matt, can I add further to that?
Okay, we need to get on with the agenda, but
But
yes.
I'd like to concur with Councillor Trevor in light of the circumstances, but without drawing this out any further, perhaps we could seek legal advice in relation to letters of support, because many of us are providing letter of supports for various projects that are beneficial to our region. Even the particular, the silos one, where I was approached to provide a letter of support, but knowing in advance that I'm chair of RADF, and further to that, the reality of it is that I wish, as we all do, to remain at the table to be able to support and debate and discuss and agree to these types of projects. So through you to perhaps the CEO, would it be possible if we could just note it, that we should get legal advice from the Commission? Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Can I leave that with you to handle, please?
I can. I guess I just reflect on the proposed legislative changes in terms of development applications, and that was very clear what was stated, that if a councillor had signed a petition, provided some support or opposition to a development application, they would not be involved in the decision making. So I would suggest that that principle extends to these situations. And there's also some matters of delegation and whether letters are provided on behalf of the organisation or the individual councillor. So I think that's something we'll do some more work on and bring that back to you. Ordinarily, I would have thought that the mayor was the mayor or CEO would be the delegates to be writing letters of support from the organisation. And I think it does put you in a compromising position if you're making decisions on projects where applications have been made to council. We can certainly follow that up and formalise that.
I just note there, CEO, Madam CEO, that it was a personal recommendation. It was not on behalf of council.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next item, which is another declaration of interest, which is, as I started before, one for myself, G.8.1, which is Planning and Environment Court, which is a confidential item. So for those watching on the live stream, after the end of the general business, we will move into confidential, and I will hand over to Councillor Goodluck for this particular item because I have a perceived material personal interest in item G8.1, as my son is an employee of Gladstone Cinemas, or at least was an employee of Gladstone Cinemas up until the COVID-19 pandemic. Unfortunately, the company did not apply for the job seeker program, and while his employment, along with everybody who worked at the cinemas, is currently terminated, there is a possibility that he could return to work at the cinemas once this pandemic is over. As I said, I believe that some people in the community might perceive that as a material personal interest, even though he currently does not work for the cinemas, and therefore I will be leaving the room and no decision from council is required, as I'll be leaving the room item G8.1. Thank you. We'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is a mayoral statement on current issues. And I want to start by acknowledging and congratulating the team at the Boyne-Tenham Hookup. What a fantastic event that was on the weekend. First time it's gone virtual in 25 years, but celebrating 25 years, and what a way to do it with 5,000 entries completely sold out. So that is a fantastic effort. And I watched the live stream on Friday, Saturday and Sunday night. Didn't win a boat or $100 from the port, and I didn't win a rod and reel combo, but certainly plenty of other people did. So it was good to see some of the local names, and good to see some of those names from right across Australia winning and entering our fantastic competition, which is, of course, Australia's largest family fishing festival. So congratulations to the committee, and congratulations to everyone who won a prize on the weekend. Well done, and 2021's looking bright. And New Zealand, yeah, apparently there's some Kiwis in there. Okay, and also as part of the Boyne-Tenham Hookup, we also saw the Gladstone Festivals and Events launched Sculptures by Gladstone Harbour, and I'm pleased to say that the People's Choice went to Ruby Davison and the Judge's Choice went to Christine Holden, so congratulations to those entrants. And that was using sea debris, marine debris, and basically making some sculptures, and it was a new initiative by Gladstone Festivals and Events. Of course, another event that went live on the weekend online, which was Labor Day, celebrating the first Monday in May. So congratulations to the Queensland Council of Unions for putting that live stream event on as well. Also on the weekend was Expressions of Interest became active now for the retirement and aged care facility in our Phillip Street Community Precinct, which is fantastic to see that moving forward. Now those Expressions of Interest are open until the 28th of July and must be lodged on Council's LG tender box. So you can't do that by fax or by email or any other way. It must be lodged through LG tender box. 18th to the 24th of May is National Volunteer Week, and I want to give a shout out to all the volunteers in the Gladstone region, whether they're the Friends of the Theatre, or the Friends of the Library, or the Friends of the Gardens, or whoever those volunteers might be, whether it's GAPDL or right across the electorate to the Boyne Valley or DCTC. They do a fantastic job, and this year it's changing communities, changing lives, and our volunteers absolutely do that. So I encourage everyone to nominate their volunteers and their organisations so we can appropriately acknowledge them during National Volunteer Week. And I'll wrap up by saying this Sunday is Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day to the mothers in the Gladstone region, especially my mum, who's hopefully watching online. Thank you. The next item on the agenda will be the confirmation of the minutes, G2.1, confirmation of the minutes for the 14th of April 2020. Do I have a mover, please? Move Councillor Trevor, seconded Councillor Hanson. Councillor Muscat, have a correction? The 14th of April? Thank you. 14th of April, moved, seconded. Any business arising? Sorry, any corrections to the minutes? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Motion's carried. The minutes are adopted. Confirmation of the general meeting minutes for the 28th of April 2020. Councillor Muscat had a question.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. In the declaration of interest, item G 0.3.4, there is, if we can correct, strong communities, take the PTY off because it's just LTD.
Yep, that's no problem.
Yep, and also there's, I'm a director, not the director, so because I'm just one of them. Thank you very much.
Ali, have you got that? Thank you. So I have a mover that the minutes be adopted as amended. Move Councillor Trevor, seconded by Councillor O'Grady. Any further discussion? No, I'll put the motion. All in favour? This motion is carried. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is our officers' reports. Officers' reports 3.1, which is RADF round 1, 2019 to 2020, and we're going to vote to, are you moving out as well? So you don't want to split those items, Councillor Muscat? Councillor Hanson is electing to leave the room, or sorry, he's leaving the room. We're not splitting the items for him, but if you would like to put a motion that we can split those items.
Yeah, just the silos one.
So you'd like to move that way, that we separate?
I'll move it, Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Churchill will
I'll
move.
move appropriately that the item, just bear with me for a second, I've got it here in front of me, that the application Rotary Club of Gladstone Midday Lighting the Silos be separated for assessment from the other projects.
Yeah, thank you. Moved by Councillor Churchill, seconded Councillor Goodluck, that the items be separated. Any further discussion? Put the motion. All in favour? Thank you. We'll deal with those items separately. We'll deal with that one first. If you could leave the room, that'd be great. Okay, thank you. Hand over to Kylie.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, Councillors, CEO. This morning we're presenting the recommendations from our Regional Arts Development Fund Committee, who have received 11 applications that were assessed at the recent meeting. Mr. Mayor, would you like me to just specifically focus on the silo first?
First one, yep.
Sure. One of the applications received and successfully recommended was the Rotary Club of Gladstone Midday Lighting the Silos project, proposed to be funded at $10,631.40.
Thank you. Questions to the General Manager, please? Or if not, a mover? Move Councillor Goodluck, or you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kylie, just can you just clarify for me, please, that the silos, who my understanding are owned by Grain Corp but are on Port's land, so
Correct.
do we have all the necessary approvals from those companies to enable this project to go ahead, yes?
Councillor Goodluck, that's correct. So we do have endorsement from Grain Corp. We're still seeking endorsement from the Port. So that hasn't been received, but Grain Corp has.
So in the event that the Port doesn't give that endorsement, what then happens to this project and those funds?
Very good question. So the actual project is to develop the plan around lighting the silos. I do believe that the Port had a similar project proposed several years ago. We'll be working with the Rotary Club to seek that endorsement from the Port.
So just to clarify, hopefully this project goes ahead. Sounds like a great project. In the event that it can't continue on, the funds won't then be expended, is that right?
I think the project would go ahead regardless. We may just seek a different site if we can't get the approval of the Gladstone Ports Corporation.
Thank you. Councillor Branthwaite, then Churchill.
So, Kylie, the lighting itself was actually broadcast from Portland, obviously at the initial sense, and then otherwise you'd be looking at Auckland Hill, which would be council land. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. I did have another thought, but it's gone. So, sorry.
Councillor Churchill.
Yeah, thanks very much for that. I think Councillor Goodluck's question is very pertinent, and I suppose as Chair of the Regional Arts Development Fund, understanding that the original application was lighting the GPC silos, but you'll see in the recommendation that it is purely lighting the silos because there are a number of stakeholders involved in this. And the business plan, I've actually taken the liberty to distribute earlier today the copy of the original letter that's come from Grain Corp, clearly indicating that they are the owners of the grain silos. So I think it's absolutely pertinent in this particular circumstance that the application by the Rotary Club of Gladstone Midday, which is overwhelmingly supported, is effectively to communicate, consult, interact, negotiate and put together a business plan, an action plan, and make a determination as to what the concept will be and the overall budget.
But that's what the funding's for, is that right? Just for that study or the whole project?
It's to put together the business plan.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? If not, can I have a mover, please? Councillor Trevor.
If the GPC don't agree or consent, what's the alternative, Kylie?
I don't have that information, sorry, Councillor Trevor, but there could be an alternate site that we could use across the region.
And is it proposed that we obtain the consent of the GPC prior to proceeding down the path of preparing the business case and expending that money?
I believe that's part of the business plan, is consulting with GPC and gaining their approval.
Should it be a condition of the approval?
Potentially.
My concern, Mayor, is that we are still awaiting the outcome of consent from GPC and that perhaps the funding should be made subject to and conditional upon the GPC agreeing to the proposal.
Fair enough. Yeah, that doesn't seem unreasonable. If it was a planning matter, we would make sure that we had consent of the owner of the land before we proceeded. Councillor Churchill.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Matt. In response to Councillor Trevor's rightfully concern, it's not only the Gladstone Ports Corporation, but the RADF Assessment Committee clearly indicated that there are a number of stakeholders. First and foremost, the owners, be it the Grain Corp, who are owners of the infrastructure. The second is that it's on, as the letter indicates, the land is leased from the Gladstone Ports Corporation. That's the second key stakeholder. The third key stakeholder obviously would be indicating from Grain Corp a community initiative led by the Gladstone Regional Council. So Gladstone Regional Council would have to be giving its approval. There are other key agencies as well, perhaps, when we consider lighting up the silos, which will be a project of national significance, I have no doubt, when it is delivered. But we need to also understand the maritime industry that are regularly using the harbour, so they would be a key stakeholder. There is another stakeholder that was identified as well when you start to talk about lights in the night, which is CASA. That's the, I'm not sure what CASA actually stands for.
Civil Aviation Safety
Civil
Authority.
Aviation, thank you. So they need to be consulted so that they're, in actual fact, Councillor Trevor, to help you with your deliberations to make that informed decision, is that there's a number of key stakeholders. Not only do they need to be consulted, but they also need to give their, I suppose, endorsement, sanction, approval. So perhaps if you were proposing to add an amendment to it, perhaps it should be conditional upon all those key agencies supporting it, because you wouldn't like to think that one agency might halt this, important project for the nation and for our region.
I think we can sum it up fairly quickly by saying that subject to and conditional upon the approval of all stakeholders, blah, blah, blah.
Thank you. Did you get the blah, blah, blah bit? That'd be fantastic.
Blah, blah, blah.
Lisa?
Sorry, just a point of clarification. Is this a chicken and egg situation where to get the approval of the port and others, you need to have the full design and how it would work to be able to put conditions on it? So is it possible to, perhaps it is, as Councillor Trevor suggests, like in principle support? I just trying to make sure, can the project proceed on that basis, or do they need to do the work first? I don't know if you can answer that.
I'd be happy with in principle support, CEO.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to move that way?
Happy to move that way, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Move that we give in principle support for this particular item in RADA for the grain silos, seconded by moved by Councillor Trevor, seconded by Councillor Churchill. Any further debate? No, I'm going to put the motion. All in favour? Motion's carried. If we could have Councillor Muscat back in the room, please. Thank you. Welcome back, Councillor. I'll hand back to Kylie for the rest of the report.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The second individual application that we're assessing today is by a very popular artist, Ping Carline, for a project titled Our Shining Stars, RADF. We're doing the whole lot now? My apologies. No, sorry, I thought we were separating that out. My apologies. Thank you, Mr Mayor. RADF assess against 6 different criteria. They are public art, virtual galleries, they are developing regional skills, building community cultural capability, regional partnerships, cultural tourism, concept development, and contemporary collections and stories. The RADF committee have recommended 10 applications to be approved at Council's discretion. They're valued at $57,876. The total project request was $74,876, with a total project value of $214,107. That's a fantastic effort for the region. The applications that we've received focus on public art, they focus on virtual galleries, workshops, multimedia and projection. I seek Council's approval for the recommendation to support those 10 applications at that value of $57,876. I'd also like to pass over to the RADF Chair, Councillor Churchill, if he'd like to add anything to the report.
Yeah, thanks very much for that, Kylie. With your permission, Mayor Matt, just gives me an opportunity, I suppose, as Chair to espouse the benefits and the virtues of RADF, but at the same time, an opportunity perhaps for Councillor Branthwaite, Councillor Cameron to at least be informed, and I've distributed some additional information earlier this morning. And this partnership, as the General Manager has clearly indicated, it is a partnership between the Gladstone Regional Council and Queensland Government, but through Arts Queensland, and they've contributed $2.08 million in RADF partnerships with 58 councils statewide to deliver cultural experiences aligned with those priorities that our General Manager has indicated. I've also provided to you perhaps the past 4 years budget allocation, thanks to the efforts of our RADF liaison officer, Di Paddock. So if Council is to support the additional 10 recommendations as before you on this agenda, 57,876, that literally will be an allocation over that period of time of $500,000. And my final comment is that there are 2 strategic initiatives, something that I was very keen to take on when I took over from previous Councillor Bush as chair of this RADF committee, was the importance of community and committee training, and that is progressing extremely well. Its anticipated completion for Take Part Act 2 is ongoing, but hopefully, subject to COVID-19, should be completed by September 2020, and RADF contributes $10,000 to each of these projects supported by our Gladstone Region Art Gallery and Museum. Why? In relation to the continued effort for training, good governance, financial accountability, and also the importance of mentoring. And I've listed there for the benefit of all of Council, but as such, for Councillor Branthwaite, Councillor Cameron, the list of the RADF committee, because each and every one of them are actively involved on a volunteer basis. And Mayor Matt, you indicated there earlier that the year of volunteer is coming up, and these are all volunteers who give of their time right across the region to mentor the development of other artists. And I think we should applaud and congratulate them from a RADF committee perspective because of their volunteer contribution as well. So thank you for that opportunity.
No worries. Did you want to move that recommendation then? Oh, sorry, Councillor O'Grady wanted to speak to it first.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Churchill, or maybe Kylie, I was just wondering, the remainder of the funds is 105,945. So is that in the calendar year to be expended or by the end of the financial year?
I believe that's calendar year, Councillor O'Grady. So there is 105,945 remaining. We are entering into round 2, and normally if we do have remaining funds, we will do a special round if there are additional applications to assess.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you. Did someone want to move the officer's recommendation? Question, Councillor Muscat?
Sorry, I just wanted to quickly ask in relation to the application from the library, a little bit more information. Just, yeah.
They see they didn't get funding. I was wondering if that's because it's council organisation.
Sure. I can actually pass over to Councillor Churchill for this one. He was actually at the meeting. So, Councillor Churchill, could you provide some more information on that one, please?
Yeah, thanks very much for that, and thank you, Councillor Muscat, for the question in advance as such. But it's not as if the project has been completely cancelled. It's a public art project for the Gladstone Regional Library. And I can assure you that it was given some great accolades during the assessment by the committee. And it will be a worthy project at some time in the future. But as a well-developed concept, we're very keen to encourage the applicants to continue in their pursuit to deliver the project. But although it was recommended for further development and resubmission to meet the eligibility for funding, one of our committee members, again volunteered, Bindi War, has offered to work with the applicant, seeking further details including essential support material, financial estimate clarity, workshop details, and one of the crucial parts in these RADF projects, especially when we are talking about public art, it's absolutely imperative that we get additional evidence of community support. We get additional evidence that all the key stakeholders, including Indigenous and elders, that there is overwhelming community support for what will end up being a permanent public art place at the library. Does that help you, Councillor Muscat?
Yeah, it's obviously I don't have the application in front of me, but yeah, it's just I was wondering in a way, being our own library, how is that they're not aware of the eligibility criteria and some of those details that apparently have left them out of the of consideration. My understanding is just because they weren't eligible, not necessarily because the project wasn't worthy.
That's correct, Councillor Muscat. So the project is a great project, and we've been working with the manager of regional libraries around that project. The project was engaging 2 local artists, but Councillor Churchill is correct. We did really need to involve more of the community and have more of a consultation process. I think one of the great things about the RIDF committee is that if an application doesn't go through with the funding round, they are mentored to bring that project to life. So we are still working on that project, but I think it does need to be more of a collaborative effort than the original application was.
Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor O'Grady had a question, then we might get a mover.
Oh, thank you, Mr Mayor. I was just wondering, does COVID affect any of these applicants? And
Kylie?
COVID will for some of the workshops. So once we are able, within the restrictions, they will progress. But there is a lot of development work that happens with a lot of these projects, so that component can happen. But if there's any public interaction, we need to do that within social distancing or when COVID restrictions are lifted.
it's the same with the ones that we've approved approved before at previous meetings, that being affected by COVID, that they will roll on?
Yeah, correct. Part of the resolution here today is also accepting 22 outcome reports. So that's 22 outcome reports of applications that have already been completed and the RADF committee are satisfied with. So we are getting a lot of great projects across the region that are funded by RADF. But really great question, Councillor O'Grady.
No,
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Goodluck prepared to move the officer's recommendation. Have a seconder, please. Seconded by Councillor Muscat. All in favour? The motion is carried. Can we have Councillor Hanson back in the chamber, please? Thank you, Councillor Hanson. We'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is G3.2, which is a Youth Council Quarterly Update, and I'll hand back to the General Manager, Kylie.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The Youth Council remains one of our great formal advisory committees to Council, and it has seen great improvements over the last few years with a dedicated focus. The formal advisory committee is there to encourage and promote the involvement of our youth in our planning and development and implementation of Council's programs. We have appropriately apportioned budget to the Youth Council this year to support them in delivering some of the projects that they're coming up with. One of the requests from Council pre-election was to have more of a view and more information around the Youth Council. So we're really pleased to be able to provide a quarterly report to Council to advise what's happening in that space. I'd really like to pass over now to Rebecca Creedy. Rebecca's been incredibly strong in the development of the Youth Council. Beck's our Community Development Officer in our Engagement and Partnerships team. So I'll just pass over to Beck.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kylie. Good morning, Mr Mayor, Madam CEO, councillors. So as Kylie mentioned today, I'd like to update you on the work and achievements of the Gladstone Regional Youth Council so far this year. So some of the highlights that we've seen this year, they hosted a Clean Up Australia Day youth site at Memorial Park, where the Youth Council organised for each participant to receive a letter of appreciation from the Mayor to encourage participation. So that was a really successful morning. They attended a governance workshop prior to their first official meeting, which was something that had been mentioned at a previous council meeting, and we found that that was really successful. The Gladstone Regional Council Governance Advisor, Vicky Hankinson, hosted that one for us. So during that session, the Youth Council learnt about how to formally run a meeting, how decisions are made, how to vote, how to move motions, learning about conflicts of interest. So that was really successful, and we've seen that really shine through in their first meeting as well. Then they voted in their chair, a young man very passionate about local politics, if you've come across him, Max Thompson, and the vice chair is our return member, Abigail Willis, and she's heavily involved in the youth social services sector. So that's been really great having them to run the meetings. They've also contributed towards Youth Week 2020 and now the online engagement platform, the Virtual Neighbourhood Centre. We had them participate in an online engagement workshop. That was just to ensure that the voice of youth was heard in our community development strategy. So great to have their input there as well. And also we've had members join the Seiki Sister City Committee, the Gladstone Regional LNG Consultative Committee, and we've also seen a number of our Youth Council members participate in Youth Interagency this year. I think that we have a really passionate and motivated group this year, willing to work hard and stay engaged even though they're doing so remotely at the moment. Looking forward, they're really trying to create awareness for themselves as a group, and they're creating individual profiles which are going to be going up on the Gladstone Regional Council website. and some videos that are going to be seen on social media. And this month is DV Prevention Month, so they're meeting tonight to work on a project for DV Prevention Month, and they'll also be preparing in advance for Mental Health Week in October to kind of improve and innovate on our Avenue to Awareness project that we started last year. Thank you.
Can I have just a quick question? Youth Week, obviously they're heavily involved, normally in May?
No, so yeah, usually in April. So that one that didn't go ahead, a lot of it we've transitioned and we're going to be using on the Virtual Neighbourhood Centre, engaging a lot of their ideas and suggestions for things that youth would like to see on the Virtual Neighbourhood Centre.
All right. Now, I did hear you say that about the Virtual Neighbourhood Centre. Is that live yet?
That's going live this week.
Awesome, thank you. That'll be fantastic for everyone listening online. Keep an eye out for that. Councillor Branthwaite?
I just wanted to make a note of young Abby. I've been following her journey, of course, because with employing her for Communities for Children and watching her journey go up and step up and be one of our young leaders of the future is quite inspiring, and we're very extremely proud of her. So just want to make that comment. Thank you.
Yeah, lovely. And she's really driving the initiative to do something for DV Prevention Month this month, as I'm sure you can imagine.
Thank you. Councillor O'Grady, then Councillor Muscat.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I must admit, we've got one of the youth in our Saki city, and it's been great, actually a breath of fresh air for someone, you know, a little bit younger coming along. But I was just wondering, I know you're going on maternity leave in 2 weeks. Who's taking over your role?
That'll be Jordan.
Jordan will be taking
Jordan
over.
Wilson.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, and good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Councillor Muscat.
Just quickly wanted to second what Councillor Braithwaite said in relation to Abby. I've also known her, and she's started in one of the organisations that I was involved in too, through a traineeship, and it's also in a way it shows how different organisations in Gladstone work together to then empower young people and see them through, you know, whatever it is that they want to achieve with their lives. So I think it's great to see that. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have a few people interested in moving. Anyone want further questions? Or
I've just got another comment, if I may, Mr Mayor. Congratulations to Rebecca and Jordan on bringing this group together. I think they've allowed them to engage the way we always wanted them to engage, I guess, and bring their ideas back to council and to others in the community. So congratulations.
Thank you.
you, Councillor Churchill, then
Yeah,
Cameron?
just one quick question through you, Mayor Matt. Rebecca, yeah, congratulations. I'm just wondering at this stage whether there's some role that our youth council could play in relation to the recovery in the COVID-19 process, because we understand the impact and the implications that have occurred on everyone, but at the same time, the young ideas might have a great innovative idea, and that's one of our key factors for council, innovation, but they may have some great innovative idea that might help in that process of recovery in our region, or albeit nationally. Thanks.
Yeah, that's great. At our meetings each fortnight, we do talk about, you know, how they're handling the situation, what they've noticed from other youth in the area as well. And they have mentioned how they notice that youth are struggling to abide by the social distancing rules. So as a part of the Virtual Neighbourhood Centre project, they're looking at creating some fun interactive challenges that can go up, and filming themselves doing things and how they are managing to keep themselves busy, motivated with schoolwork. The majority of them are Year 12. But yeah, I do agree, if any ideas that we can get from them could certainly be used in other places as well.
Yeah, thanks for that, Rebecca. So through you, I suppose, Mayor Matt, how would those innovative ideas find their way into the COVID Recovery Committee agenda items?
I would suggest that perhaps recommendations from the Youth Council. They have a meeting, they have a chair, they have a deputy chair, they can put forward recommendations and they can put them to the council and they can put them to that committee. So I'm sure that Max and Abby and others will no doubt have some recommendations for us to handle. Over to you, Councillor Cameron.
Yes, thanks. Rebecca, do you have any interaction with Rotaract or interact with your youth council?
We don't directly, but we do have a couple of members on the youth council that are members of Rotaract.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I have a mover in Councillor Goodluck and a second in Councillor Hanson that the officer's recommendation be adopted. Yes, is that correct? No? No further discussion. I'll put the motion. All in favour? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is G3.3, which is councillor representation on the Coastal Hazard Adaptation Strategy Reference Group. And I'll hand over to the Manager of Governance. Is that correct? Over to you, Tanya.
Good morning, councillors. This report seeks council's consideration of the appointment of a councillor to chair the Coastal Hazards Adaptation Strategy Community Reference Group and to endorse the terms of reference.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the General Manager, or I'd like to nominate Councillor Muscat otherwise? No questions? This is a very simple one. You have a question, Councillor Muscat?
Yeah, it was in relation to the terms of reference and mostly about the timing on the meetings and the expression of interest that we be seeking from organisations.
Yeah, I do have Brent with me here. Perhaps he can talk a little bit more in detail on that.
Sorry, what's the question again? Just the timing of the meeting?
Yeah, it just, I guess there's a number of implications there that say that we will be doing things in May, and we're already in May. I was just wondering how we'll manage that.
Absolutely. So I think that expressions of interest thing will delay our time frame quite a bit, because we're sort of working on, I think, 2 weeks for expressions of interest and any other decision making we have regarding who we select from that panel. So you'll probably put us about 3 weeks back, I imagine.
Thank you.
Thank you. Considering Councillor Muscat is representative already, one of the reps on the LMAC, Local Marine Advisory Committee, and also represents Council on Reef Guardian, I think this fits in very well. Coastal Hazard Adaptation Strategy, I thought it was adaptation in the past, but adaptation strategy. So I'd like to move that Councillor Muscat be our appointee. Seconded by Councillor Churchill. Any further discussion? No, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Motion's carried. Thank you, Councillor Muscat. We'll move to the next item on the agenda. Thank you to the officers as well, please. Next item on the agenda is G3.4, which is Council Information Sessions and Strategic Opportunity Committees. Back to you, Tanya.
Thank you, Mayor. Last term, Council did hold informal sessions allowing officers to provide additional information to councillors. So this report is seeking council's endorsement of continuing the information sessions and strategic opportunity committee meetings.
Thank you. Questions to the manager, please. Councillor Goodluck.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Tanya, I support us continuing to hold these meetings until the state legislation says otherwise. I just had a query in regards to the councillor information sessions. The 3 dot points there explain the options considered and key reasonings behind recommendations that will be made to a future general meeting. Obviously we should have those key reasonings explained in reports in general meetings. So can you just clarify that to me? Are we talking about, something that might be 6 months ahead where we've got to just have an update in that respect? Or are we talking about a heads up for councillors, so to speak, in, the next general meeting, what's coming? Because there's a difference for me in that space.
Yeah. So these points are directly from the terms of reference, and we can revisit the terms of reference. It's generally not as a preemptive to council making a decision the following meeting. They serve a range of purposes, and it's essentially an opportunity that varies from week to week, but to update council on information.
Thank you. These meetings would be no debate, no decision making, information only, and the opportunity for clarification.
That's correct.
And they are minuted as well. So
that's correct. Any further discussion?
Oh, I see no reason why we can't retain, and I agree with Councillor Goodluck, the current framework until we hear anything that's changing in legislation from state government.
Thank you. Would you like to move that way?
Yeah.
Thank you. Move Councillor Hanson, then we adopt the officer's recommendation. I'll just get a seconder, and Councillor Branthwaite, and then throw the deputy. Councillor Trevor.
Thanks, Mayor. In relation to the information session, philosophically, I've got an issue in relation to it so far as transparency is concerned. I also have a concern in relation to often these meetings escalate into debate, and I think if we're going to have them in the future, I think they should be regulated more, given that, as I say, we invariably find ourselves, intentionally or otherwise, involved in debating the issue or issues before us when really the general meeting is intended for that. I personally don't get a great deal of benefit out of these informal meetings. I accept that they're reasonably important, I guess, for some in relation to being appraised of what's coming next. But I do wonder how much loss of productivity is involved with regard to the establishment in getting the information session ready and then 2 weeks later having the formal debate in relation to the issue. So I wonder whether we're staggering or causing issues in relation to officers and other employees of the council being able to move important issues that are impacting upon the council forward rather than having these meetings similar to what we foreshadowed as being an issue in relation to committees, where we would have committee meetings and then we would then we'd come back before the council in relation to debating those issues, and some of the decisions that had been made by committee were overturned by council, and at that stage the information that I was receiving from officers is that rather than being helpful to the establishment, these meetings were actually an impediment in relation to productivity. So I do wonder whether the system should just flow more easily with just meetings every fortnight rather than the information sessions. But it's only a personal view. I do have concerns in relation to the legislation. Only yesterday or the day before I got a disturbing text from Councillor Churchill in relation to further restrictions, and perhaps I might raise that in business later on today, but I don't know. I like SOC. I think SOC is very important for councillors to be able to bring matters before the table in relation to what they perceive to be important projects for our region. Others may not, but then if they're brought before the table, some convincing arguments could be made in relation to the future direction of some projects in our community. But overall, I'm not a fan of information sessions.
Thank you, Tanya. Can you explain if it's an issue for the organisation to have these meetings? Is it a drain on staff time? Maybe over to you, Lisa, then.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Trevor, for your comments. Councillors will probably recall we used to have 2 information sessions a month, and we've reduced those back to 1 towards the end of last term, and certainly the 2 in a month probably was creating that endless report writing cycle that Councillor Trevor's referred to. I guess the organisation's here to support councillors in your roles and to allow you to be as successful as you can with the right information. Just reflecting on the previous report, something detailed like a significant study like that, I think it provides the opportunity just to be able to share some deeper information and allow for questions that then at a later date will inform decision making if there's information you need to clarify. But we're totally here to serve the council of the day, so if it's something that's helpful and useful, it's a priority for us to continue to do it. If it's not, we're happy to take your direction on that.
Thank you. As long as we abide by the rules of no debate, no decision making, information only, and seeking questions for clarification, I think they're fine. Otherwise, I would support what Councillor Trevor is saying. We just don't have them. But as long as there's exactly that, no debate, no decisions, information only, and questions for clarification, then I think that allows more information for councillors when you actually make the decision. But Councillor Muscat, have a question?
It's not necessarily a question, but while I understand all the point of views, I find the information sessions very valuable, and I really appreciate the support the officers give us in providing us with some information. Sometimes, we don't know what questions to ask, sometimes if we don't have certain pieces of information. So I really appreciate the meetings, and I would like to see them continue.
Thank you. Any Councillor Churchill?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Matt. I suppose just one point of clarification for my own mind is, in essence, the issue of transparency. So there's no debate, no discussion, etc., as it is, but it was indicated here earlier that it is minuted, and as Councillor Trevor's indicated, it could escalate, but that's up to the chair at that particular time.
Also up to the councillors to listen as well.
Yeah. But the reality of it is, at the end of the day, if it's minuted and it's recorded, because that seems to be the big issue that's coming out now, is recording everything we do within council business, no matter what, 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. But where are these minutes recorded, and and where are they processed, and what happens to them?
Tanya?
We do record the councillor information sessions, and we keep them internally. They're not published to the public. However, they would be subject to a right to information request.
And declarations of interest are exactly the same in information session. I would suggest that if you had a material interest or a conflict of interest, you declare it and just leave. It's an information session, and you shouldn't necessarily be staying there if you have a conflict. Anyway, is there any further discussion, or would someone like to move for or against the officer's recommendation, please? Councillor Muscat would like to move the officer's recommendation. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Goodluck. Any further discussion? No. I'll put the motion. All in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. Carried. We'll move to the next item on the agenda, which is, we're moving to the end. So there's no deputations, I understand, Tanya? Councillor reports? No councillor reports. Thank you. Councillor Muscat?
I just wanted to highlight that May is the Queensland Domestic and Family Violence Prevention Month, and we have a very dedicated group in the Gladstone Coordinated Community Response to Domestic and Family Violence, and they are, with community support, encouraging everybody to be or paint the town purple, so in recognition of the effects of domestic and family violence, and trying to raise awareness. So if you jump on their Facebook pages and support the cause, that'll be amazing. So, and I will also like to ask the councillors to maybe do a bit of a picture to send to the group while they putting a video together to show community support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Grady?
Just more to Natalia, Councillor Muscat's information. I was just wondering whether we could light up the front of the chambers in purple.
Yep, we already have that in train. I think you'll find.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No worries. No further councillor reports. No
So
councillor
just on that, Mayor Matt, I'm proud to be wearing purple today, because today is actually Domestic Violence and Family Violence National Remembrance Day today, and I will be laying appropriately a wreath at 1 o'clock today down at Friend Park at Barney Point, together with many others. But because of COVID-19, we are restricted and or limited as to the numbers that can go there. So the local wonderful organisation has allocated 5-minute spots throughout the day and throughout the afternoon. But it's a scourge on society, and the more we can do to remove it, the better it'll be. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is urgent business, and it's not really urgent business, but I'd like to move it as general business, is that at the previous council meeting, and we've just recently adopted the minutes, G3.4 was the councillor appointments to boards, committees and organisations. Councillor Trevor was appointed to the TAG Committee, Traffic Environment Advisory Group, he, I believe, is happily to step down for Councillor O'Grady to step up, as Councillor O'Grady has 2 committees and Councillor Trevor has a number more. So thank you, Councillor Trevor, for volunteering to stand down from that, and thank you, Councillor O'Grady, for volunteering to step up. But this has to go through a formal vote of council, so I'd personally like to I'll throw the to Councillor Trevor first, and then I might move the motion.
I'm happy to second your motion, Mayor, whatever it might be.
Oh, right. I'll move that Councillor O'Grady be replaced, possibly, as that might be the word. Replace Councillor Trevor as Council's representative, one of Council's representatives on TAG. There is a second delegate on that as well. And it's seconded by Councillor Trevor. He's happy to second the motion, and thank you, Councillor O'Grady, for stepping up to that. Any further nominations or conversational debate? No, I'm going to put that motion now. All in favour? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors, for that. Any further urgent business? Councillor Trevor.
Thank you, Mayor. As I foreshadowed in the previous discussion in relation to the item prior, I did receive what I described as a disturbing text yesterday from Councillor Churchill in relation to information that he had received that in future mayors and councillors may be required to record all of their conversations that take place with constituents over a telephone device. If such be the case, I'd call for an urgent report from Council to provide us with timely legal advice as to what we need to do in relation to satisfying this requirement that we must now record our telephone conversations, and whether that requirement at law also requires us to record our conversations with our constituents in private. What concerned me greatly when I received that text from Councillor Churchill, who was providing us all as councillors with an update, was that there were a number of intersecting acts that may be applicable in this instance. There's the Local Government Act, the Privacy Act, which is a Commonwealth Act. We've got the whistleblowers legislation. We've got the Anti-Discrimination Act. We've got the Telecommunications Act and the Public Records Act, all of which may be in conflict each with each other. So I do need some advice as to whether next time a constituent phones me, whether I need to record that, and also whether next time a constituent wishes to engage with me in a face-to-face interview, whether I need to record that CEO, because the information that I received, as I say, yesterday, we all received it from Councillor Churchill, who keeps up to date with these matters, was quite concerning for me in relation to discharging my obligations as a current sitting councillor, and also extending to all other councillors and mayors throughout the state of Queensland. So if I could have that report, please, because I need to know my rights and I need to know my constituents' rights, and I need to know my legal rights and everyone else's rights in relation to complying with the obligations, responsibilities of a councillor and directions coming from the state government.
Thank you, Councillor Trevor. CEO?
Happy to follow that up, and I'm not sure whether this is in relation to, or council saw the advice released by the Office of the Independent Assessor on the use of messaging applications, whether that's the source of it. But yes, we're more than happy to bring back a report on that topic.
Thank you, CEO.
Through the Mayor, we already do that to a certain extent. We all carry notebooks which can be scrutinised by anybody that wants to find information. And most times I take a telephone call, it's to find out something about something for one of the residents with council, and I do make notes. It's just tidying up that as well as not much more than I already do. So yeah, we need to have a look at it, but all of our notebooks that we carry, whether they're scribbled in or whatever, can be scrutinised in if anybody wants information about the way a decision's been made.
Yes, thanks, Councillor Hanson. I agree with you there, but it seems to be an extension of what is already required, and that is now a formal recording via a telecommunications device, and possibly an extension of that to a personal interview. If the requirement is to record the conversation of a constituent with a councillor or mayor, via a telecommunication device, then it would necessarily be inferred from my point of view that I should also be recording my conversations that I have face-to-face with my constituents, whether that be at a function, whether that be at a pre-arranged meeting, whether that be outside the council chamber, whether it be inside the council chamber, whether it be anywhere in the world. The extraordinarily compliance now is becoming very overbearing, let me tell you.
Thank you. Would you like to put a motion then, Councillor Trevor, or we seek a report on potential legislation changes, is something along those lines?
Happy to do that, Mayor.
Mayor Matt, if it's a motion that's coming from Councillor Trevor, I'd be prepared to second it, but I'd just like to add an additional comment to it. It seems to be that we understand that these legislative changes come about as a requirement of circumstances or situations, but I think it's also a matter of making sure that we are continually aware, that we are continually informed, because in reading a number of the areas, keep in mind that any particular matter is an allegation until it's proven. But the fact is that I always continue to seek the natural course of justice, and it's good that we do have that in our policy, the natural justice or procedural fairness. But the article that Councillor Trevor refers to that I distributed comes from the media, and that, fair enough, is understanding. They're keeping people informed, but we need to make sure that we get the legal understanding of what recording may be, because from the time of that article I've spoken to a number of residents and or ratepayers in our region that we all do in the course of our business, and I think we need to get that legal understanding of what a recording actually is, because my interpretation of it was that it needed to be a transcript and or a physical recording of the discussion.
Yeah, okay. Well, we've got a motion that we seek further clarification, and mind you, as you said, it's a media report, and until it's legislation probably doesn't mean a hell of a lot, but I'm not sure if it's going down that path anyway, but let's just wait and see. So the wording for the recommendation that we seek clarification on what council's obligations are in terms of recording meetings, phone conversations and the like will do. Thank you. You can tidy that wording up for us, Tanya. We've got no screen to see it on, so is everyone happy with that?
Relevant, Mayor Matt, relevant to council business, because I've clearly indicated before, and I'll say it again, I understand the law and the legislation and I will comply with it, as we all will, but at the end of the day, we do represent the interests of our residents and ratepayers, and we need to be able to make sure that we can continue to have dialogue with all our residents and ratepayers.
Thank you. Move Councillor Trevor, second Councillor Churchill. Councillor Muscat has a question before I put the motion.
Yeah, just quickly, I mean, I'm not against the motion, but are we anyway going to get information as to the changes coming up? And I guess this has come up in a number of agenda items as well. I mean, when changes come in, we will have information coming to us to understand the changes and how that affects us.
That will happen in due course. If legislation changes, Tanya and her team will make sure we're updated on them. So do we need another motion to make sure that happens?
Oh, no, that automatically happens. Yeah. Over the time I've been on council, if there's legislative changes coming, we will be informed by our governance team quite early on.
Just referring back to the previous agenda item, recommendation number 2, which was resolved, is that a further report on the impact of the legislation changes come back to council. So we will do that. That has been resolved there. There was quite a specific question from Councillor Trevor though, so we're more than happy to follow up on that particular aspect.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. It just seems like we keep going around and talking about the same thing and going around in circles when we actually need to just wait, see what the changes are.
Okay, no worries. Well, I do have a mover and I have a seconder for that motion, and it's been read and I'm sure it's clear to everyone in the room. Put the motion now. All in favour? Motion's carried. Thank you. That is no more general urgent business. I'm going to, what we'll do for those listening now in the gallery, gallery online, is that we'll move into confidential. So the live stream will go on to a holding pattern. I'll hand over to Deputy Mayor Khan Goodluck, who will chair that session, and then we'll open the council meeting again and we'll vote on the confidential items, and then we'll close the meeting. So I'd like a mover to move into confidential, please. Move Councillor Churchill, seconded Councillor Cameron. That we move into confidential, and the holding pattern will be on the live stream until we resume. All in favour? Motion's carried. Thanks.
we've just come out of confidential, Mayor Matt, so we're...
All right, so welcome back, and this is going to be a bit awkward because I'm going to sit down, reopen the meeting, and then walk back out again, and then come back in again. So we'll move to the next item on the agenda, which I have a conflict in, which Council has just discussed. So I'll leave the room, and then I'll come back and close the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Matt. So over to you, councillors. Can I get a mover for a recommendation in relation to this matter? Councillor Hand.
Recommendation to support the development. My apologies. I'm happy to move that we support the development going forward.
So you want to lodge grounds of appeal supporting the development?
Yeah, they're the words. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Second and... Sorry, Councillor Trevor. Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Goodluck and Chair. I'm just wondering whether, in order to tidy it up, Rick, whether you should just move the officer's recommendation and add the words after Inc. and that Council lodge grounds of appeal supporting the development.
So be it, Councillor. I would like the Council go along those lines. Thank you.
We've got a mover and Councillor Hanson. Can we get seconded? Councillor Muscat. All those in favour? That's carried. Unanimously. Can we call the Mayor back, please?
Thank you, Councillor Goodluck. There's no further agenda items. So before I declare the meeting closed, I would also like to give a shout out to the federal government who have launched their $300 million hydrogen industry investment fund on the weekend. So that's fantastic news for the Gladstone region, and I'd like to see some projects successful in their grant applications there. So $300 million for the Hydrogen Industry Investment Fund, and so good to see that. We did see the Queensland Government launch their hydrogen strategy here in Gladstone, and of course here at the Gladstone Entertainment Convention Centre we saw two successful applications earlier this year through the Queensland Government's strategy. So good to see the Queensland Government and the Federal Government all acknowledging that hydrogen is very important for our future, and the Gladstone region is a place that they should be investing. And with that, I'll declare the meeting closed. Thank you.